Hi everyone, it's James here. I hope you've all had a very good week. This is just going to be a short video going over the DCF and Excel exercise that we set for you in the session. I know we've had a couple questions about going over the Excel part again and also asking for the solutions. So this is what that video is going to be about. So first, let's remind ourselves about what is a DCF. So as we said in the session, a DCF or discounted cash flow analysis is a method to value an investment based on its expected future cash flows, and it takes into account the time value of money or the interest rate. So we showed you this equation, which is how you calculate a DCF. You're essentially summing up the present value of all future cash flows and discounting this by the interest rate or the discount rate. In the session, we went through this example. I'm not going to go through it again, but it shows you step by step how to get the DCF for this example. So moving on to the projects, this is project 3 that was on the sheet. It's been updated a little bit as there were one or two mistakes. Mainly the percentage of debt and percentage of equity didn't add to 100. So we fixed that, and we've also increased the cost of the project as it was a bit low. So now I'm going to go through making this in Excel. I'm not going to go through the other two projects as if you can do this, you can do those ones, but I will put the solutions up on Microsoft Teams. Now in Excel, let's open up a new worksheet and begin making the DCF. Let's just change the scaling so you can see it a bit better. So the first thing we want to do is we want to put the currency that our financial model is going to be using. In this case, we're using Great British Pounds, and we're doing pounds, and we're doing thousands increments. So this is just a good way to kind of save space in your model so it's not overcrowded and you have loads of extra zeros where you don't really need it. So now we've done this, let's begin filling out the years. So our data goes for 5 years, and let's fill this in now. So we have year 1. And to make this a little bit more dynamic, for the next years, instead of just going 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to refer to the first cell. So we can, if we were to change the year to say 2020, it would then update the rest of the cells. So let's type in cell C1 equals the previous year plus 1, click enter, and then we can fill this for the remaining years if we click shift and then the right arrow. So this is year 3, year 4, and year 5. And then if we go Control R, this will fill this formula right. So we have our 5 years here. And let's say we were to change this to the year 2020, this will update very nicely for us. So let's put this back to 1. So we now want to fill in the revenue. So revenue in year 1 was 4850. In year 2 was 12130. In year 3 was 17410. Year 4 was 19090. And year 5 was 21300. And of course we have the terminal value at the end, which we will be calculating in this example. So we have our years, we have our revenue. What else do we need? So we're going to be calculating the DCF. So let's put that in here. And then we can move on to our assumptions. So let's have a little column here for assumptions. So in the first example on the sheet, we gave you the WACC and the terminal value. In the second example, you guys had to calculate the WACC. And in this example, we've got to calculate both the WACC and the terminal value. So let's fill in the data we've got. So the first thing we have is we have the information to calculate the WACC. So the first thing we need is the percentage of financing, that is equity. And we also have the cost of equity. Then we have the percentage of financing, which is debt. And then we have the cost of debt. And then finally we have the tax rate, and then we can calculate the WACC. So let's fill in our assumptions. The first thing we have is the percentage of financing, which is equity. In this case, it's 73% or 0.73. The cost of equity is 0.138. The percentage of financing, which is debt, which is 27% or 0.27. We have the cost of debt, which is 0.045. And finally, we have the tax rate, which is 21% or 0.21. So let's put all these into percentages just to make it a little bit easier. So what we can do is we can go to one of the cells and we can hold down Shift and then Command, or if you're on Windows, Shift and Control, and then click the down arrow, and it will select all the cells in this column until there's a break. So now we can change the number format of this and turn it into percentages. So let's go into our number format settings, more number formats, percentage, and let's have these percentages, as with one decimal place, just to keep our model nice and easy to read. So we've got this now, and now we can use the formula to calculate the WACC. So the WACC is equal to the percentage of financing, which is equity, which is cell B6, times the cost of equity, which is 13.8%, and then we add this to the percentage of debt times the cost of debt, and then we times this by 1 minus the tax rate. And this should spit out our WACC, which in this case is about 11%. So what we can do now is we can copy the formatting from these cells just to make this WACC fit. So we could copy a cell with Control or Command C and then do paste special. So we can go up here and we can go paste the formatting, and that is all looking very good. So now let's add some more information. We have the perpetual growth rate. And we use this to work out the terminal value. And we also have the cost of the project or initial investment. So I'm just going to add another column in here just so it's a bit easier to read. So our growth rate is 4%, so 0.04. Our terminal value is something we're going to work out. And then our initial investment is 200,000. Is that the right number of zeros? Yep, it is. Great. So now what we can do is let's work out the terminal value. So if you check the formula on the sheet, we'll be able to see how we work this out. So the terminal value is equal to the cash flow in the final period that we're considering. So in this case, it's year 5. So that's the cell up here. And we times this by 1 plus our growth rate, which is 4%. And then this is all divided by the WACC minus our growth rate. So if we click enter, this should spit out our terminal value. And then let's use this in the cell up here so we can refer to the terminal value. So this is a bit more dynamic. So let's say this changed. It also gets updated up here, which is very good. So there we go. Now let's figure out what our DCF is. So let's plug in our numbers. So we have the DCF is equal to the revenue in the period divided by 1 plus the WACC, which in this case is the discount rate, and then this is to the power of the year we're in. So in this case, it's year 1. So what we can do is then we can then fill this across. and then with Shift and then Command or Control R. But something's happened here with these from years 2 to 5. So let's go to the cell we want to inspect and click F2, and then we can see what's happening. So what's happening is because we haven't anchored the WAC cell, every time we move across, it's also moving the cell with the WAC across as well. So what we want to do is we want to anchor the cell, the WAC cell, as it's the discount rate we're going to use for all of the years. So let's delete these years here. And let's go back into this cell, and we can again view this cell by doing F2. And let's change this. So let's go to C11, which is the cell with the WAC. And if we do F4, we can anchor this cell into place. So now if we copy across this formula with Shift and then right, and then we do Control or Command R, we then get the correct WAC. So let's go on one of the cells here and let's audit this cell again with F2. So you can see in the 5th year, we are doing the revenue in year 5 divided by 1 plus the WAC. And then this is to the power of the year, which in this case is 5. So we can be confident that our DCF for these years is correct. So finally, let's work out the present value or the DCF for the terminal value. So we do something very similar. We do equals the terminal value divided by 1 plus the WAC. And then this is to the power of the final year of data we have, which in this case is year 5. So this is now the present value of the terminal value. So then we can work out our total DCF by doing equals sum, open bracket, and then we could select each cell individually, or what we can do is we can hold down Shift and go over a range or an array, and this will do the sum for all of these cells. And we do this, and we get our DCF. So now we've got our DCF, we can go about formatting our model to make it a little bit more presentable. So the first thing I'm going to do is with the years up here. So we want these headings of these cells to say that they're years. But obviously if we change this to year 1, we're going to get a value error because obviously year 1 is not a valid number. So let's change this back to what we had before. And this is where we're going to use a custom number format for these years. So that Excel treats these cells as numbers, but we can have some text before the cells, before the numbers. And so we can read, when we read in the model, we can see it as years. So let's highlight all of the year cells with Shift and then right. And then we'll go into custom number formats and we'll create a new number format. So we'll go to custom and we're going to select the 0. And then we can go in this box and we can edit this. So before the 0, we're going to do couple speech marks, and then this is basically going to print in front of the cell something that we will see in the model, but Excel will basically ignore. So let's type in year and then a space and click OK. And then all of these cells will now show up to us as years, but Excel will just still treat them as numbers. So that's one way that we can format our model. What else we can do is we can just tidy things up a bit. So let's make this right-centered, and then let's change the formatting of some of the numbers. So I'll go into one of the cells here, in this case revenue for year 1, and let's just change the format of this cell. So again, I'm going to number formats, going to more number formats, and then we can edit this. So in this case, it's going to be a number. So it doesn't really matter if you want currency or number. I'm just going to do it in number because I then don't need to put the pound sign because I've already mentioned that it's in pounds up here, but feel free to do currency if you want the pound sign. So I'm going to do number. I'm going to have one decimal place just to keep things simple, and have a comma separator for after 1,000. And then I'm going to have any negative numbers in brackets, which is usually accounting practice. So let's do this, and you can see that this cell looks a little bit more presentable. So what we can do here is we can copy this cell with Control C or Command C, and then we can paste the formatting in all the other cells that we want to have the same formatting as the revenue in year one. So first of all, let's do the rest of the revenues. So let's select all of these, and might as well do the terminal value as well. And then we can paste special, which if you're on Mac, the shortcut for this is Command Option V. And then if you're in Windows, you can look up this shortcut on the sort of cheat sheet that we sent during the session. So we want to copy the format of the selected cell onto these cells. So this will update the format. And we also want to do this for the DCF years. So let's do the same thing. In this case, I'll use the menu here. And we also want to do this for the terminal value and the initial investment. So nice, that's all looking a bit neater. Let's press escape on that cell. Let's change the headings. So let's make it bold. Let's choose a nice FinMod green, and let's make the text white. And then we'll do a similar thing for the cells up here, just to tidy things up a bit. So this model is looking kind of close to finishing. There's a few more finishing touches we can do. Let's first do following convention, and let's have the hard codes in this model as showing up as blue, so it's easy to distinguish what is hard coded and what is using a formula. So let's select all the revenue cells, because obviously they are hard coded from the question. So Shift, Control or Command, and then right, select all these cells. We don't want the terminal value actually, because we use that as a formula. And then let's change this color to the blue. And what else is hard coded? Obviously all of our assumptions. So let's select all of our assumptions except from the WACC, because that is a formula. Let's change this. And then we want to also change the color of our growth rate and our initial investment, because they were also assumptions. So very nice. What else do we need to change? Let's add some conditional formatting to our NDCF, just so we can compare this with the initial investment to see whether the project is worthwhile or not. So let's go to the cell and let's go to conditional formatting, and let's highlight cell rules. And if this cell is greater than the initial investment, then we want it to show up as green to show that it's profitable. And then we can do the same thing again, but this time less than this cell. And if it's less than the initial investment, let's make it red so we can see that it's going to result in a loss. So this is a very good way of quickly being able to see whether the project is worth it or not, as we don't have to constantly compare numbers. So let's say we change the initial investment. Let's double the initial investment. You can see now that the project is not profitable. So finally, let's remove the grid lines. Let's go view, remove the grid lines. One last thing that we could do is we could just do a bit more formatting. We could bold this to make this stand out. We could potentially use a border and double underline the final value. There's kind of no set finished way of presenting your model. It's all kind of down to preference. This is what I think looks good, but I know that Sive kind of did this earlier and sent me her copy, so let's see what she did in terms of formatting her model. So as you can see, Sive's model looks a little bit different. She has kind of made a table for calculating her WACC. Well, I've just done the list. And she's also frozen the panes so that if we sort of scroll left or scroll down, we can still see the headings. So this is very useful for when you're doing bigger models or with a lot more data. So we'll be using this in week 4 when we're constructing an income statement. But for now, it's not really that necessary as we only have a small amount of data, but it is a good habit to get into. So let's go back to my model and change this. So when we want to freeze panes, we want to go to the cell, and then anything to the left of this cell or above this cell will be frozen. So we're going to view, freeze panes, and you can see that now if we scroll left or scroll down, we can still have the headings. So this is our finished DCF for the updated project 3. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be uploading the solutions to the other 3 projects on Teams, and also uploading the slides that we used in the session. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great weekend.